Hello. Um, I'm staring at myself. And, you know, I read something a few days ago that went along the lines of you go for a long time without looking at yourself, and one day you find that your face was never the reflection of who you are within. And I think there's something wrong about that. You know, it's almost within what they say that you can find the problem. You know, the because I think when you look at yourself, uh, if what you see is surprising, or if what you see is strange, then your sense of who you are has diverged from who you really are. And it's not that the face is wrong, but that you were wrong. And um, I think, I'm looking at myself here, and I want to see who I am. Um, so, and maybe I also think that should come along with some thinking, um, or some talking, some language. Maybe I want to see myself speak some words, see who I am as I say what I am. I have had a lot of ideas that I developed. Oh, I do that. I look away sometimes when I'm thinking, because I don't want to know who I am at the moment I'm speaking. Wait. This looks strange. Wait. Who I am at the moment. Um, Wait. So a lot of the times um, whenever I'm whenever I think I'm saying whenever I'm thinking purely with no self-reflection, and my thought has picked up wind, under its wings, and I'm just going, going, and going, going, and I just start to look away, as if I know that it's possible I could see myself. And I don't want to. Why not? Why not? I'm a fraud. And I think and I look away, and I think and I look away. I think there was a period of time where I could look at myself while I was thinking. And that the ability to do that was like a superpower. That's how I felt, really. Um, And it helped me to see who I was, because I could see myself changing moment by moment. I could see how the ways I was thinking were maybe strange or surprising, that I didn't really know myself, and that by seeing that I didn't know myself, I actually had the evidence right in front of me, or had the facts right in front of me. I knew I was wrong when I felt that something was strange when I looked at my face. I knew I was wrong when I felt strange. And then, if I looked closely at what was really there, I had the faith that I could get it right. Which felt like it was never ending, or maybe not. You know, during that period of time when I was able to look at myself while I was thinking, and I wasn't really doing it like this. I wasn't looking into a camera, but I was looking at myself. I was looking at my handwriting. I was writing, and I knew who I was. It was like I was looking at my face when I was looking at the handwriting. And I reached some conclusion. I think actually during that period was the only time I felt that thinking had a real conclusion. After that point, I started to doubt that. I felt that something was wrong with having a real conclusion. Something had settled, but had settled at a lie or a self-deception, or something like this. Something convenient. Not to say that it was stupid, but maybe, self-deception was the best thing in a small amount. I think it would be nice to speak about some of my ideas. What's this face I'm making? How was I doing that? What's that? It looks very stupid. Would that be alright? Those are the words that go with that face. thought I would be here for a while, so I'm very it was very smart to bring some water. What's there to say? What's there really to say? Something. Come on, something. It's almost like what I feel is a lightness, like I feel almost like my concern is wrong, or I feel both concerned and a certain lightness about it. You know, I'm so used to failure. It wouldn't bother me if I couldn't make any video. And I would feel alright with that, but I would like to know that I couldn't make the video. For some reason I'm stuck. I want to make the video. I'm starting to feel like it's pointless to make the video. And there's a third thing. That I'm not quite sure that I couldn't make the video. I think in a way there's something wrong with me. I like to laugh. I'm sliding down this wall slowly. Maybe I can fix myself here. My body a little bit. Maybe if I just start. Okay, let's start. Oh my god. Okay. We're back to the beginning. Alright. So, there was something about power, control. I wanted to name my video Reverberation of the Sound Control, which would mean something like the you know, I said it was so important. I said something to myself about language is pure originally and it is abused with time, and that you can recover language in its pure form, and you will find that in its pure form it has its pure meaning, or it is free of contamination, free of alternate meanings, that there's a division that occurs in language between the abused form of language and the pure form of language, that you have language on the one hand, and you have a social application of language, and that these two things are independent of each other, serve different purposes, aims, and even aims itself, there's the social application of the word aims, and there's what aims really are. And then the reverberation of the sound control is to say that in the reverberation you might hear the original form of the word control. But why? You hear the original form. You hear. You see. You see the body. You see the face. You see the face. Like that. Or like this. You see the face. And the face is the echo, the reverberation of what's inside. You see? The reverberation. But why? Why that word? Couldn't have been a different word. There's a different reverberation. Because at the moment you're speaking, at the moment you're speaking, you actually you're also applying yourself to the language which exists alone. You're intermingling who you are with the language. You're contaminating the language as you speak. And the reverberation of the sound is the language alone. Spoken, sure, but at the moment it's just the language alone. A reverberation of the word control. Reverberation. So let's reverberate. Let's speak about control and see the language that unfurls itself around the word control. Let's see the language. Am I even ready to speak about that? In a way, I think it might be a better life to never be ready to see the language around control. I think I made a mistake earlier today. So I was developing myself, my ego, unfortunately. No, I don't think I can make my video. It will be something else. Well, I'll tell you what I thought, and what I mean by that is I developed a sense of self. I've been doing this for some time, and it's really bad, but I've been I have an ego, you know? It charged my phone now. So when I'm, so it's so horrible, It's so difficult to undo that mistake, to undo your own ego when it succeeds. Because unfortunately, knowledge is it satisfies the ego. It knowledge can free you from the ego, but it can also feed the ego. And it's so important to be very clear. No, I had no choice. Wait. Okay. So I'll tell you how I fed my ego. So you'll think, well, how could this feed your ego? You'll think, Elliot, your ego demands so little, and yet there it is. Well, it's also hard to express. Something you've already fed to your ego is lost. It's fed, it's consumed. You can't understand the knowledge that has been fed away to your ego. It ceases, to my mind, knowledge is understanding that's been lost already. When people speak about knowledge, usually they're talking about something very productive, right? They're talking about the institutions. They're talking about science. They're talking about literature. These giant, homunculus creatures that swallow knowledge, that are there for anyone who wants to eat up all the knowledge in the world, or to be fed all the knowledge in the world. And then anyone who wants to can be a writer. Anyone who wants to feed their knowledge away can do that. That's why we have literature. We also have literature because there are a few people who actually understand. So what was I saying? There was what I fed to the ego. So here's my idea, okay? There's good, evil, good, evil, and mediocre. Okay? Like I said, what you really understood is never the regurgitation. Really, that's such a good word, the regurgitation of knowledge. What a disturbing phrase. We've been using that since childhood. You regurgitate the knowledge. You throw it up. You know? And I'm throwing up my own knowledge, yeah. Something about individuality too. There was something about that, and how power creates individuality, or how power reduces people to objects, which is impossible. And in the effort to reduce people to objects, the counterpart is individuality, and then the body, and the body is different. You look at the body, and then there was something about how wait one second. Oh, I spilled water. It's exhausting to look at yourself for a very long time. Actually, this is rather exhausting. So, there's a lot of things to say. Is that right? There's a lot of things to say. How strange. How very, very strange. Okay. I should have combed my hair better. I did a miserable job. There we go. Very professional. I am a professional. Well. Okay, well, wait. my time? Do I want to keep going? Come on, there was a lot to say. Come on, there was a lot to say. I can't even. But there was something. You know, we don't have to be like that. I mean, this world is, you can live, there's the good, the bad. There's a dream, there's a dream. It's a very real thing to live otherwise. We lived in this world so long. Like, it's become the rain. The rain, like the mountains, like the wind. It has its own. We start to think about the way this world is like it's the wind or the rain. We start to think about it like that, it's so wrong. It's so wrong. The world is not like that. It doesn't need to be like that. We took this world, the world we were given, and we took it as if it were the wind or the rain, but it's not. It's not the wind. It's something wrong, and it doesn't have to be like that. We can't change the wind, but we can change that. We don't have to have that. And we're getting so confused every year. Getting more and more confused. Because, okay, what am I talking about? You might say that. What am I talking about? Well, if you want to be so literal, maybe I'm too crazy and I don't know what I'm talking about. Because I don't know what I'm talking about literally. Right, I can't talk about it. Off of a broken mirror. I'm speaking from a broken mirror. Capitalism, it has its own beliefs about the world. It comes from a certain amount of belief about the world, thoughts of understandings about things, It isn't an arbitrary system. It's not just the wind. And I'm not a communist, because people, they get so confused. They think that communism or something like that is a competing belief. They think you have one ideology, let's say communism, or you have another ideology, capitalism, and both of them are just practical ways of looking at the world. But communism is not that. You know, communism is what flows naturally. There isn't a system associated with it. You know, there's no system. There's no communist system. There's nobody who, you know, there's nothing there. There's just the way the world is. That's what a communist thinks, you know. And they don't think, they don't know, they don't have any. A communist isn't like, you know, a communist isn't a communist. How do you say that? It's a capitalist isn't a capitalist really either, you know. What I mean is, you know, people who go out and they declare themselves as a communist, or they declare themselves as a capitalist, they're not communists, they're not capitalists. They're not what they say they are. They're people with ideology, but ideology is a different thing. Let me tell you. Let me tell you. Let me tell you what a communist is. Let me tell you what a capitalist is. So a capitalist wishes he was not a capitalist. And let me tell you this story, alright? I was thinking about this last night. Well, it seemed like a useful story. This is a confession, I think to a different person, maybe if I was talking to somebody else, it would not have to be a confession, but I often have visions of myself sitting across from some kind of interviewer, giving my opinions about the world. And in this vision, it seemed to me to be a very useful story in explaining what a capitalist was. It seemed to me to be a very useful story to explain what a capitalist was. And so in this story is something that actually happened. So I was hanging around this guy. He's much older than me, maybe 50, 60 years old. And I was young, 18. And I hang around this guy, and in some odd way, there's a narrative there. There's a reason for us to be hanging out. And you might give it the name like a mentorship. He's there to help me set my life straight. But what this mentorship consists of is basically me being poked at. I need to grow up. I need to be a man. I need to do things like a man. I need to be like him. I need to, and in his own way, that was his way of caring about me. Poking at me. And, calling me a pimp. Wait, a wimp. Definitely not a pimp. A wimp. He didn't actually say that. What would he have said? Well, it doesn't really matter, but that's the point, right? And, one day I needed money. And I asked him for money. And I didn't need to be poked at, really. Because I wasn't there to be poked at. I just needed a friend. But, I asked for money. And I needed money, I actually needed money. And, and that he took this as an opportunity to lecture me, right? But I recognized, that he didn't care that I needed money. but what I needed was money. And that was it. That was the end of the relationship, the friendship, mentorship, whatever you want to call it. That was it. And this seemed to be a very useful story to explain what a capitalist was. Because what is capitalism really about, right? It's about providing yourself with whatever it is you need, right? This way, you don't need to arrange any relationship. You don't need to be friends with your butcher, your maid, your chef, whatever. You don't need to be friends. You don't need to get along. You don't need to like one another. At the end of the day, you have what you need. That's the capitalist. And I would have wished not to be a capitalist. I would have wished to not need the money, right? I would have wished that in some way the relationship was such that he could give me money. And he's a millionaire and I didn't need that much money, so it wasn't actually that outrageous of me, I think, to ask. But anyway, he didn't give me that, so and people are very complicated, and it's very difficult to live in the communist world. But I can tell you also what a communist is. A communist is something like somebody who writes. A writer is always a communist. And Duras said that, not me. So it's true. You know it's true. Because I didn't say that, Duras said that. And what? Oh, how did my hair get like this? I had it combed just a little while ago. Choop. So why is a writer communist? Because I need to figure out what the fuck Duras meant by that. I don't understand. But it's true. Come on, it's true. Come on. But a communist is something along the lines of, a recognition that my body is your body, is someone else's body, is somebody else's body, that ultimately what it means to be a human being is to respond to life itself, and at the same time life itself is the same, and that the circumstances might be a little bit different, but that in the end, what it means to make meaning out of life, what it means to organize your mind, to stretch your body, to move your limbs, it's the same. Life is the same. We have one life as all. That's a communist, And the reason that this could be turned into a plan, that you might be able to foresee a communist future, which isn't the point of communism, but it's the way that an ideologist would think, is, ideologue. An ideologue would think that communism could work if everybody was able to recognize their shared humanity, their actions, which are all the action of pursuing one's natural needs, one's own health. The ego is a way of pursuing your own natural needs, but it's the confused way. It's not, I don't understand like Freud, because the ego isn't just an ontological part of the mind. It's not it's not like everybody has an ego. An ego is a certain kind of confusion. It's a very important confusion that most people share. It's the society, civilization's confusion. And but the ego, wait. It doesn't matter what the ideologue thinks, but I'm just saying that you will probably hear when you, in the same breath as communism, an ideologue's economic plan about how people can pursue their own shared humanity. This idea that people pursue the health of the body. And there was something interesting today. I don't know how it fits in, but it may be part worth talking about. I don't know. But this idea of desire is a recognition that people actually have a different reality. That desire between a man and a woman is an interest in the body of the other. Desire is itself communist. And that's not to say that in order to have desire, you have to proclaim yourself to be a communist. It just is communist, right? It's the same way I say, like, people who claim themselves to be communist are not really communist, right? People who proclaim themselves to be communist, what does that mean? That means that you are somebody with an ego. You've identified yourself in the strata of human beings called communists. You've separated yourself. You've drawn up a division. You've given yourself a word that says, I'm different. A communist says, I'm one with you. Right? A communist is never going to say, I'm a communist. It's the same way a writer should never say they're a writer. But that's different. No, somebody else said that about the writers. But that was not Thoreau. That was some German guy. He said that. Oh, I hate that guy. I hate German people. Oh, that's not nice to say. Oh my god, my video is gonna get no views because I said that. But it's true. Come on, can't we all feel that? Damn it, I ruined my video with my minor racisms. I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel bad to be a little bit racist. Maybe I should. Wait. But a capitalist, a true capitalist, recognizes the impossibility of an alternative to capitalism. And that is why he wishes he was not a capitalist. capitalism as the wind in the trees, as far as that goes. We've so adapted to a capitalist world that it becomes the wind in the trees, but the people who think that capitalism is the wind in the trees, they can't really call themselves a capitalist. They're not really, it's not really true. They're just people who have adapted to their world, And you can say that by adapting, they've become a capitalist, but it's only insofar as the world that they know is capitalist. They haven't chosen capitalism. When I needed money, I chose capitalism because I chose also to live. You see? And capitalism is that way too. It's a choice that you have no choice to make, but to make. That's such a good sentence, no? Capitalism is the choice that you have no choice but to make. Sounds very catchy. Wait. And this was important to say too. So the ego is a search. And it's a search for somebody to control. And you might think to yourself, oh, what would you think to yourself? I don't know. Who cares? Not that I don't care about you, but who cares about what I'm saying? It's good to remember that, I think. Something's wrong, I think, but it's okay. Oh, I think I'm getting to the delicate subject. I will just do it fast. So the ego is a way to control somebody else. And how, why, what does that mean? What is the confusion? The confusion of civilization, that is this called ego. What is it? Well, civilization is a chain. And it's a chain of control. And there will always be people who don't have anyone to control. There will always be people who seem to be able to control everyone. There will be this strange mountain-shaped chains. And civilization is like that. And what's the confusion? The ego. Why is this search? The search, the mind, the consciousness. The consciousness is a search. But what's the confusion is the kind of searching. It's the searching that the consciousness feels it has no choice but to make. It feels it needs a relationship to invert the abuse that came its way. You see what I mean? Take for instance, you have somebody at work, and this person is your boss. They call you a fat pig. And you go home, and then you beat your children. Right? That happens all the time. Wait, that's not a realistic story. Somebody at the work beats... No, that doesn't happen either. What happens at the work? I'm so jobless. Somebody at the work says, "You're doing a horrible job, you're a piece of shit." That happens. Alright, I got it right. And they go home and they beat their children. That happens too. And what's going on there? They're inverting the abuse that they received. They're nullifying it. They're neutralizing it. They're putting themselves on the other side of what happened. The soul and the ego, the good and the bad. They're switching the sides to neutralize themselves. You see? And that's confusion. It doesn't need to be that way. You can recover what was abused. You know, language. Abused all the time. Lost all the time. Destroyed all the time in everyone's hands. You have no idea. If you've ever reached a point where you feel language is pure, you have no idea how painful it is to listen to people abuse language. And happens all the time. It's so sad, you know. But it is just the way it is. It almost is good to reaffirm sometimes that language is pure originally. You can always recover what was abused. It's a confusion to think that you need to invert it, to invert the abuse in order to recover it. It already was there. I had a girlfriend who said that the soul doesn't need anything, it's just perfect the way it is. It's the ego that needs something. That's so true. That's exactly what it means. What she said is exactly what I wished to say with what I'm saying now. That's how it is. You know, you could always recover. Always recover the language, always recover the understanding of reality, the understanding of your body, the understanding of somebody else's body, somebody else's mind. You can always recover it. Whatever was pure is true. Is true to the reality. And the reality doesn't change. What lays at the bottom of reality is far more imperturbable, unassailable, inassailable than our day-to-day conflict. That's why the people who are good are communists. Like me, I'm good. I'm such a good person. That's true, I won't even laugh. That's true, I'm good. Most of the time. All the time I wish to be good. There's, what was I saying? The people who are good are the people who refuse civilization. They refuse to invert the power that was leveraged against them. And, you know, civilization functions. You know, it so happens that people form, through power, beneficial relationships to each other. One person says, I have power over you, and what I'm going to do to you is I'm going to force you to go to school. Parents, that's parents. And then people, the children, they grow up and they invert that relationship. They say to their own children, I'm going to force you to go to school. You see? It's fine. But it's actually not. It's horrible. It's horrible because it doesn't need to be that way. I want to finish my video soon. Why? People who are good, they are the end of the power civilization. And oftentimes, they're the ones who have no choice to, The ego is also a confusion that's so easy. It's so difficult to recover what was lost, rather than to invert the relationship of power. You know what I mean? The ego says, I have some bad emotions, and I can push that forward. Right? The ego says, rather than realize what was lost, develop an understanding out of what was lost, replace within myself what was lost. And that's so hard to do compared to simply say, I choose not to feel bad. So many people, they're categorically against unhappiness. They refuse to be unhappy. They refuse to think of themselves as unhappy. Because they are simply either waiting to abuse somebody else, or they are abusing somebody else, whether they know it or not. But I'm unhappy. No, that's not true, really. I think in a way you replace a lot of what is lost in yourself. You replace a lot and a lot. You recover a lot and a lot. And at the end of the day, abuse that comes your way, it doesn't even reach you. Nothing can be destroyed. That's already been recovered, rebuilt. But it's not good to take pride in that kind of thing. I think I'm done with my video, no? What's there left to say? Yeah, I think I'm done with my video. I've gotten bored with him looking at myself, or maybe just tired, just tired. Yeah. Okay.